Have you ever wondered why your relationships, whether at work, with friends, or even in love, seem to leave you feeling drained? Do you catch yourself saying, "Why do I keep giving so much and receiving so little in return?" If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many of us were raised to believe that being nice is the cornerstone of being a good person. We were taught to avoid conflict, put others first, and maintain harmony at all costs. But what if this well-intentioned advice has been quietly sabotaging your relationships and your sense of self? Let's be honest, when was the last time your kindness was met with the respect and appreciation it deserved? Instead, hasn't it often been taken for granted or, worse, mistaken for weakness? You might think you're doing the right thing by being endlessly accommodating, but what if this behavior is holding you back? What if it's costing you your happiness, your dignity, and your ability to form truly meaningful connections? In this video, we're diving deep into 7 compelling reasons why you should stop being nice to them, whoever them may be in your life. We'll explore how misplaced niceness can harm your relationships, stunt your personal growth, and allow toxic behaviors to thrive. And before you start thinking this is about turning into a ruthless, uncaring person, let me reassure you it's not. This is about balance. It's about developing what Stoics like Marcus Aurelius might call true strength through wisdom. Imagine walking away from this video with a new perspective, one that empowers you to command respect, protect your peace, and cultivate Stoic relationships that truly enrich your life. Doesn't that sound liberating? Let's start this transformative journey with our first reason. Reason 1. They mistake your kindness for weakness. Have you ever heard the phrase, "Give them an inch, and they'll take a mile"? It's a cliche for a reason. When you're overly nice, constantly saying yes, bending over backward to please others, and avoiding any sign of confrontation, people begin to equate your kindness with vulnerability. And in a world where not everyone operates with fairness or goodwill, this perception can quickly become a liability. Let's break this down. Why does kindness sometimes translate as weakness? It's because when you consistently put others' needs ahead of your own, you unintentionally send the message that your boundaries are negotiable. It's as if you're wearing a sign that says, "I'm here to be used, no questions asked." Over time, this invites behavior that exploits your good nature. Think about the coworker who piles their tasks onto your plate because they know you won't refuse. Or the friend who constantly cancels plans but expects you to drop everything the moment they need you. Here's a question for you. When was the last time someone reciprocated your relentless effort? More importantly, when was the last time someone thanked you in a way that felt genuinely meaningful? If you're struggling to come up with an answer, you're likely caught in a cycle where your kindness is being taken for granted. And if that's the case, let me ask you another question. Why are you allowing it to continue? Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is within our control, and this applies directly here. You can't control how others perceive or treat you, but you can control how much access they have to your time, energy, and goodwill. By enforcing boundaries, you remind others that your kindness is a choice, not a weakness to be exploited. This is where Stoic relationships come into play. They're built on mutual respect, not lopsided dynamics where one person constantly gives and the other takes. But let's be clear. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're being unkind. It means you're prioritizing your self-respect and ensuring that your kindness is met with equal effort. Isn't that a fair expectation? Now, I know what you might be thinking. If I stop being nice, won't people dislike me? Won't I come across as selfish or rude? These fears are valid, but they're rooted in a flawed assumption that your worth is tied to how much you can do for others. True worth, however, comes from living authentically, and authenticity sometimes requires saying no, even when it's uncomfortable. Think about it. If someone values you only because you're constantly bending to their will, is that relationship worth preserving? And more importantly, what are you sacrificing by keeping that relationship alive? Your peace of mind, your energy, your ability to focus on the people and things that truly matter. These are heavy questions, but they're crucial ones to consider. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. And being a good person doesn't mean allowing others to walk all over you. When you start setting boundaries and stop being excessively nice, something remarkable happens. People begin to see you in a new light. The coworker who once exploited your helpfulness might think twice before asking you to take on their workload. The friend who canceled plans without notice might suddenly realize your time is valuable. And if they don't, that's your cue to reevaluate the role they play in your life. It's not easy to step away from the habit of over-accommodation. It requires self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to face potential discomfort. But the rewards are immeasurable. You'll find that as you stop equating kindness with self-sacrifice, you'll attract people who appreciate your efforts without exploiting them. These are the foundations of Stoic relationships where respect and reciprocity reign supreme. So let's ask ourselves, what's stopping you from embracing this change? Is it fear of conflict? Fear of rejection? Or is it simply the inertia of years spent believing that being nice is the only way to be good? Whatever the reason, it's worth examining, because once you understand it, you can begin to dismantle it. The journey toward balance and authentic kindness isn't easy, but it's transformative. And if you're willing to take the first step, you'll discover that the respect and peace you gain are far greater than anything you've lost by being excessively nice. Reason 2. It enables toxic behavior. Have you ever been in a situation where your willingness to accommodate someone didn't just go unnoticed, but actively encouraged them to treat you poorly? It's a bitter pill to swallow, but when we're overly nice, we unintentionally enable toxic behavior in others. This is not just about tolerating bad behavior, it's about how our lack of boundaries can create an environment where that behavior thrives. Think about it. How often do people repeat actions that they believe are working for them? If someone sees that they can rely on your niceness to avoid accountability, to get away with selfishness, or even to manipulate you, why would they stop? This isn't to say that their actions are your fault, but it's crucial to understand how being too nice can serve as a green light for toxicity. Let's dive deeper into this cycle. Imagine a friend who constantly cancels plans at the last minute. Each time you smile, say no worries, and agree to reschedule without expressing how it makes you feel. Over time, what happens? They come to expect that you'll always be okay with their behavior. They don't have to change, because there are no consequences for their actions. And this pattern extends far beyond friendships. It can appear in romantic relationships, family dynamics, and even at work. Why does this happen? It's because being overly nice often stems from a fear of conflict. We tell ourselves if I confront them, they might get upset or walk away. But is avoiding that discomfort worth the cost of your own peace? What are you teaching others about how you deserve to be treated when you consistently avoid standing up for yourself? These are difficult questions, but they hold the key to breaking the cycle. The truth is, when you enable toxic behavior, you're not just allowing others to harm you, you're also harming them. You're depriving them of the opportunity to grow, to face the consequences of their actions, and to develop healthier patterns of behavior. Think about this through the lens of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Being good doesn't mean being passive. It means acting in ways that are fair, just, and courageous, even when it's uncomfortable. Here's an example. Imagine a coworker who regularly misses deadlines and expects you to pick up the slack. You've been doing it without complaint because you're nice, right? But what's the result? Their lack of accountability becomes ingrained, and you're left with the extra burden. Now consider an alternative approach. What if you calmly but firmly told them that you can no longer cover for them? Yes, there might be an awkward moment. They might even push back. But over time, they'll learn to take responsibility. Or they won't, in which case the issue is exposed for others to address. Either way, you've set a standard for how you deserve to be treated, and you've encouraged them to rise to the occasion. But let's pause for a moment. I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself enabling toxic behavior because you didn't want to create conflict? How did that work out for you? If this resonates, hit the like button and drop a number 1 in the comments. Let's create a conversation about this, because your experiences matter and you're not alone. Now, back to the cycle of enabling. It's important to recognize that breaking free isn't about punishing others or lashing out. It's about setting boundaries with clarity and kindness. Instead of silently stewing when someone disrespects your time, speak up. Instead of resenting the friend who takes advantage of your generosity, express how their actions make you feel. Yes, these conversations can be uncomfortable, but they're necessary. And here's the good news. Discomfort is temporary, but the respect you gain from asserting your boundaries is lasting. Stoicism reminds us that our power lies in how we respond to situations, not in trying to control others. When someone displays toxic behavior, you can't change them, but you can choose how you engage with them. You can decide whether their actions deserve your time, energy, or attention. Isn't that empowering? Instead of feeling like a victim, you reclaim control over your role in the dynamic. This is the foundation of Stoic relationships, where respect, honesty, and accountability are prioritized over convenience or fear of conflict. Let's consider another scenario: a romantic partner who frequently crosses your boundaries. Maybe they speak to you disrespectfully or dismiss your feelings. If you consistently let it slide because you want to avoid an argument, what message are you sending? That their behavior is acceptable. And what happens over time? The disrespect escalates, leaving you feeling unvalued and frustrated. But here's the pivotal question. Is it truly kind to allow someone to continue acting in ways that harm both of you? Setting boundaries isn't about being unkind or harsh. It's about creating space for mutual respect to flourish. When you clearly communicate your expectations and hold firm to them, you give others the opportunity to reflect on their actions and make changes. This is how real growth happens, and if they choose not to respect your boundaries, that's information you need to decide whether the relationship is worth continuing. I want you to imagine what your life could look like if you stopped enabling toxic behavior. Picture relationships where your kindness is valued, not exploited. Picture waking up each day feeling confident that you're surrounded by people who respect you and contribute to your well-being. Isn't that a future worth working toward? And it starts with a simple but powerful act of saying no more. Before we wrap up this point, I want to remind you that your journey toward setting boundaries is not one you have to navigate alone. This community is here to support you. If this message resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Together we can explore more tools and perspectives to help you build the life and relationships you deserve. To conclude this section, let's return to the core idea. Being overly nice doesn't just harm you, it harms everyone involved. It creates a cycle where toxic behavior goes unchecked and growth is stunted. By stepping out of this cycle, you're not just protecting yourself, you're helping others grow too. That's the kind of transformative power that Stoicism teaches us to embrace. And it's the kind of power that can change your life. If you found this point insightful, don't forget to hit like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever broken the cycle of enabling toxic behavior? What was the outcome? Let's keep this conversation going, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next step in this transformative journey. Reason 3. You sacrifice your own needs. When was the last time you truly stopped and asked yourself, what do I need? Not what someone else expects of you, not what will make others happy, but what will bring you fulfillment, peace, or growth. If you can't recall the answer, you're not alone. One of the most insidious effects of being overly nice is that it trains you to put others first, always. It's a pattern that can become so ingrained that your own needs don't just take a back seat, they're not even in the car. At first glance, sacrificing your needs for others might seem noble. Isn't that what selflessness is about? Isn't it a sign of strength to put others ahead of yourself? In certain moments, yes, true generosity and compassion are beautiful traits. But what happens when this becomes a default mode of living? When every decision you make is driven by someone else's comfort or convenience, what does that leave for you? Over time, this kind of self-neglect leads to exhaustion, resentment, and a deep sense of disconnection from yourself. You might find yourself constantly tired, unable to focus on your own goals, or feeling as though your life is slipping out of your control. Does any of this sound familiar? And here's the real irony. The people you're bending over backward for often don't even notice the sacrifices you're making. It's a cruel paradox. Your efforts to be kind and accommodating end up making you feel invisible. Stoicism teaches us the importance of balance, of understanding what is truly within our control and acting accordingly. When you sacrifice your needs, you're surrendering control over your own well-being. You're allowing external demands to dictate your internal state. But is that the kind of life you want to lead? Imagine if Marcus Aurelius had ignored his own needs and instead tried to please everyone around him, regardless of their intentions. Would his wisdom, discipline, and strength have inspired generations? Unlikely. True strength comes from recognizing your value and prioritizing your growth, not from giving away pieces of yourself until there's nothing left. Let's explore what it looks like to consistently sacrifice your needs. Picture a parent who works tirelessly to provide for their family, but never takes a moment for self-care. They might think they're being a good provider, but over time, the exhaustion seeps into every aspect of their life. Their patience wanes. Their health deteriorates. The joy they once felt in their role begins to fade. And here's the truth. By neglecting their own well-being, they're not just harming themselves. They're also unable to fully show up for their loved ones. Or consider the friend who always says yes. They're the one you can count on to help move furniture, lend money, or drop everything when you're in a crisis. But when they need support, who's there for them? Their relentless niceness has conditioned everyone around them to take without giving back. This isn't friendship, it's a one-sided transaction that leaves the giver drained and disillusioned. If this resonates with you, take a moment to reflect. How many times have you pushed your needs aside to make someone else's life easier? And what has that cost you? Your health? Your happiness? Your dreams? These are painful questions, but they're necessary ones. Because once you confront the truth, you can begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that you've been giving away. Reclaiming your needs doesn't mean abandoning others. It doesn't mean becoming selfish or unkind. It means recognizing that your well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. It means understanding that you can't pour from an empty cup, that to truly be there for others, you must first take care of yourself. This is a cornerstone of Stoicism, the idea that self-mastery and inner balance are prerequisites for leading a virtuous life. So how do you start? Begin by asking yourself what you truly need, not in a vague, abstract sense, but in specific, actionable terms. Do you need more time to rest? More support from the people around you? More space to pursue your passions? Once you've identified your needs, the next step is to communicate them. This can be difficult, especially if you're used to putting everyone else first. But remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's an act of self-respect. For example, if you're feeling overwhelmed at work because you're always the one staying late, have an honest conversation with your manager. Explain your limits and suggest solutions that ensure fairness across the team. Or if you're in a relationship where you're constantly the one making sacrifices, take the time to express how you feel. Be clear, be kind, but also be firm. The people who truly care about you will understand and adapt. Those who don't, that's valuable information about the role they should or shouldn't play in your life. It's also important to cultivate self-awareness. Pay attention to the moments when you instinctively prioritize someone else's needs over your own. Ask yourself why you're doing it. Are you afraid of conflict? Are you seeking approval? Or is it simply a habit you've never questioned? By understanding the why behind your actions, you can begin to change them. And let's not forget about the importance of rest and reflection. The Stoics placed great value on solitude and introspection as tools for self-improvement. In our busy, connected world, it's easy to lose touch with yourself. But taking even a few minutes each day to check in with your thoughts and feelings can make a world of difference. Use this time to ask yourself, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I honoring my needs? If the answer is no, don't see it as a failure. See it as an opportunity to grow. The road to reclaiming your needs isn't always easy. It requires courage, self-discipline, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. But the rewards are immeasurable. When you stop sacrificing your needs, you rediscover your worth. You begin to live a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. And you set an example for others, showing them that true kindness starts with self-respect. So, take a moment to consider. What would your life look like if you stopped putting yourself last? What dreams, joys, or opportunities could you embrace if you prioritized your needs? The answers to these questions could change everything. Reason 4. Genuine relationships require authenticity. Have you ever felt like you're wearing a mask in your relationships? Like you're saying what you think others want to hear, doing what you think they expect of you, and holding back parts of yourself to avoid rocking the boat? If you've been overly nice for a long time, this might feel all too familiar. But here's the catch. When you prioritize being nice over being authentic, you unintentionally create relationships that lack depth and sincerity. Authenticity is the cornerstone of genuine relationships. It's what allows you to connect with others on a meaningful level. When you're authentic, you're not just showing people who you are, you're inviting them to do the same. But when you're overly nice, that authenticity gets buried under layers of people-pleasing. And here's the truth. Relationships built on niceness are fragile. They rely on a version of you that isn't real, and sooner or later the cracks begin to show. Why is authenticity so important? Because it fosters trust, respect, and true understanding. Imagine a friend who always agrees with you, even when they secretly think you're making a mistake. Or a partner who suppresses their own needs to keep you happy. On the surface, these dynamics might seem harmonious, but beneath that surface there's frustration, resentment, and a lack of real connection. Over time, this erodes the relationship from the inside out. Now, let's flip the script. Imagine a relationship where both people feel safe to express their true selves, flaws, disagreements, and all. It's not always easy, but it's real. And real is what lasts. When you stop being overly nice and start being authentic, you give others the opportunity to know the real you. And if they choose to stay, you can trust that they're there for who you are, not for the version of you that's constantly trying to please them. But why do we struggle with authenticity? Often it's because we fear rejection. We worry that if we show our true selves, others won't accept us. But here's a question to consider. If someone can't accept you as you are, is that a relationship worth keeping? Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control, our actions, our thoughts, and our values. Whether others accept your authenticity is beyond your control. What is within your control is your decision to live authentically, no matter the outcome. So think about how freeing that could be. No more pretending. No more walking on eggshells. Just you, living in alignment with your values and allowing others to see the real you. That's the kind of freedom that Stoic relationships offer, connections built on mutual respect and honesty, rather than performance and pretense. Let's explore what this looks like in practice. Imagine a family member who constantly makes decisions for you, assuming they know what's best. If you're overly nice, you might go along with their suggestions, even when they clash with your own goals or values. But what if you spoke up? What if you calmly and respectfully explained your perspective? Yes, they might disagree. Yes, it might lead to some tension. But that tension is a small price to pay for a relationship that respects your autonomy and authenticity. Or consider a workplace dynamic where you're always the one saying yes. Every extra task, every unreasonable deadline, it all falls on your shoulders because you're too nice to say no. Over time, this doesn't just affect your workload, it affects how your colleagues perceive you. They see you as someone who will always accommodate them, no matter the cost. But what if you set a boundary? What if you said, I'd love to help, but my plate is full right now? Yes, there might be some initial pushback, but in the long run, you're teaching others to respect your time and energy. This shift from niceness to authenticity requires courage. It means embracing discomfort and trusting that the right people will value your honesty. It also means letting go of relationships that rely on your inauthenticity to survive. That can be painful, but it's also liberating. When you clear space for genuine connections, you make room for relationships that truly enrich your life. Before we go any further, let's pause for a moment. Does this idea resonate with you? Have you ever felt the weight of being nice at the expense of being real? If this hits home, take a second to like this video and drop a number 1 in the comments. Your voice matters, and this community is here to support you. And if you're finding value in this conversation, don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more to explore about building stronger, more authentic relationships. Returning to the topic, let's address a common misconception, that authenticity means being brutally honest or disregarding others' feelings. That's not the case. Authenticity isn't about being harsh, it's about being truthful. It's about expressing your thoughts and feelings in a way that's both honest and considerate. You can be kind and authentic at the same time. In fact, authenticity enhances kindness by making it genuine. When you offer support, encouragement, or praise, it comes from a place of sincerity, not obligation. And isn't that the kind of kindness that truly matters? Stoicism reminds us that living in alignment with our values is the path to inner peace. When you're authentic, you're not constantly second-guessing yourself or worrying about maintaining a facade. You're free to focus on what truly matters, your growth, your goals, and your relationships. And that freedom is priceless. As we wrap up this point, let's take a moment to reflect. What would your relationships look like if you showed up as your authentic self? How much lighter would you feel if you let go of the need to please everyone? And how much stronger would your connections be if they were built on honesty and mutual respect? These are questions worth pondering because they hold the key to a more fulfilling life. Remember, authenticity is a gift, not just to yourself, but to everyone around you. When you embrace it, you inspire others to do the same. And that's how genuine relationships are born. So take that step, however small, toward living authentically. You won't regret it. Reason 5. It creates resentment. Let's talk about an emotion many of us try to ignore. Resentment. It's not a pleasant feeling, but if you've spent years being overly nice, it's probably crept into your life at some point. Resentment builds slowly, like water dripping into a glass. At first, you might not even notice it. But over time, those little drops accumulate until the glass overflows, leaving you feeling angry, bitter, and disconnected from the people around you. What causes resentment? In many cases, it stems from unmet expectations, specifically, the expectation that your kindness and sacrifices will be reciprocated. When you consistently prioritize others' needs over your own, it's natural to hope that they'll do the same for you. But here's the harsh truth. People don't always meet our unspoken expectations, especially when those expectations haven't been clearly communicated. And when that happens, the gap between what you give and what you receive can become a breeding ground for frustration and resentment. Think about this. How often have you gone out of your way to help someone, only to feel unappreciated when they didn't return the favor? How many times have you smiled and said, "It's fine," when it wasn't fine at all? And how often have you suppressed your true feelings because you didn't want to seem unkind or confrontational? Each of these moments is like a drop of water in the glass. On their own, they might not seem like much, but together, they add up to something overwhelming. Stoicism teaches us to examine our emotions and understand their origins. Resentment, when viewed through a Stoic lens, is a signal, a sign that something in our relationships or behavior is out of balance. If you're feeling resentful, it's worth asking yourself, what am I sacrificing and why? Are you giving more than you're comfortable with because you fear rejection? Are you avoiding difficult conversations because you don't want to upset others? And most importantly, are you expecting others to read your mind instead of clearly expressing your needs? Unspoken expectations are a major source of resentment. When you're overly nice, you might assume that others will naturally notice and appreciate your sacrifices. But the truth is, people can't read your mind. If you don't communicate your feelings and boundaries, how can you expect others to respect them? This lack of communication creates a disconnect where you feel unappreciated and they feel oblivious. Here's an example. Imagine you're always the one planning family events. You coordinate schedules, handle logistics, and make sure everyone is happy. At first, you do it willingly, thinking, this is just what I do. But over time, you start to notice that no one offers to help. No one thanks you. And suddenly, what once felt like a kind gesture begins to feel like an obligation. The resentment builds. You might even lash out, saying something like, why am I always the one who has to do everything? But by that point, the damage is done. The lack of earlier communication has created a rift that's hard to bridge. Resentment isn't just damaging to relationships, it's also harmful to your well-being. Carrying the weight of unspoken frustrations can leave you feeling exhausted and disconnected from your own sense of self. Over time, it can even lead to cynicism, where you start to view others through a lens of suspicion and negativity. But it doesn't have to be this way. By addressing resentment at its root, you can break the cycle and create healthier, more balanced relationships. So how do you do that? It starts with honesty, both with yourself and with others. When you notice resentment building, take a step back and ask yourself what's causing it. Are you giving too much without setting boundaries? Are you avoiding difficult conversations because you fear conflict? Once you've identified the source, the next step is to communicate. This doesn't mean unloading all your frustrations at once. It means calmly and clearly expressing your feelings and needs. For example, instead of saying, "Why don't you ever help me?" try saying, "I've been handling a lot of the planning lately, and it's starting to feel overwhelming. I'd really appreciate it if we could share the responsibilities more evenly." This approach is not only more effective, it's also more aligned with the Stoic principle of focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on problems. It's also important to examine your own expectations. Are they realistic? Are they fair? And most importantly, are they based on clear communication, or are they assumptions? Stoicism reminds us to accept what we can't control, and this includes other people's behavior. You can't force someone to meet your expectations, but you can control how you respond when they don't. By focusing on what's within your power, your actions, your boundaries, and your communication, you can minimize resentment and create relationships that are more balanced and fulfilling. Another key element is self-compassion. Resentment often comes from a place of feeling unappreciated or undervalued. But instead of waiting for others to validate your efforts, take a moment to appreciate yourself. Acknowledge the energy and care you've put into your relationships, and recognize that it's okay to step back when you need to. Remember, your worth isn't defined by how much you can give, it's defined by who you are. Finally, let's consider the bigger picture. What would your relationships look like if you addressed resentment head-on? What if, instead of letting it simmer beneath the surface, you used it as a catalyst for growth? By acknowledging your feelings, setting boundaries, and communicating openly, you create space for more authentic and meaningful connections. And isn't that what we all want? A life filled with relationships that uplift and inspire us, rather than ones that leave us feeling drained. Breaking the cycle of resentment isn't easy, but it's worth it. And the first step is recognizing that your feelings are valid. You deserve relationships where your kindness is appreciated, your needs are respected, and your boundaries are honored. By taking action, you're not just protecting yourself, you're also creating the conditions for deeper, more fulfilling connections. So the next time you feel resentment creeping in, don't ignore it. See it for what it is. An opportunity to grow, to communicate, and to create a life that aligns with your values. That's the kind of life the Stoics would encourage us to lead, one where we act with intention, clarity, and self-respect. Reason 6. You lose respect in the eyes of others. Respect is one of the cornerstones of any meaningful relationship. Without it, the connection becomes shallow, fragile, and ultimately unfulfilling. Yet when you're overly nice, always saying yes, avoiding conflict at all costs, and putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own, you risk losing the respect of those around you. This isn't because people inherently dislike kindness, but because excessive niceness often sends the wrong signals. Think about it. How do you view someone who never stands up for themselves? Someone who agrees with everything, even when it's clear they have different feelings. While their intentions might be good, their behavior can come across as lacking confidence or self-respect. Over time, this perception chips away at how others value and treat them. And here's the painful truth. The more you bend over backward to accommodate everyone else, the more likely it is that they'll take you for granted, or worse, see you as someone they can easily exploit. Now, let me ask you, have you ever felt like people don't take your opinion seriously? Have you ever noticed that, despite all your efforts to be agreeable, you're often overlooked or undervalued? If so, it's worth reflecting on whether your niceness is inadvertently signaling to others that your needs, feelings, and boundaries don't matter. And if that's the case, how can you expect others to respect you when you're not fully respecting yourself? This isn't about blaming you, it's about empowering you to make a change. Stoicism teaches us the importance of self-respect and self-discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That doesn't mean being harsh on yourself. It means holding yourself to a standard of integrity and self-respect. When you respect yourself by setting boundaries, expressing your true feelings, and standing firm in your values, you naturally command respect from others. Let's explore why excessive niceness undermines respect. When you're overly accommodating, people might start to see you as a pushover. It's not that they consciously decide to disrespect you, but they begin to perceive you as someone who lacks authority or conviction. And once that perception takes hold, it can be difficult to change. This dynamic can play out in all areas of life. At work, where colleagues might offload tasks onto you, in friendships, where you're always the one making sacrifices, or in romantic relationships, where your partner might take your kindness for granted. Here's an example. Imagine you're in a meeting at work. You have a strong opinion about a project, but instead of speaking up, you nod along with the majority to avoid conflict. Over time, your colleagues might start to see you as someone who doesn't contribute much, even if you're brimming with ideas. Or think about a friendship where you're always the one initiating plans, picking up the tab, or compromising your schedule. While you might think you're being a good friend, the other person might start to expect these behaviors without appreciating them. In both cases, your niceness isn't earning respect, it's diminishing it. So how do you break this cycle? The first step is to redefine what kindness means to you. True kindness isn't about erasing yourself to make others happy. It's about acting with integrity, compassion, and strength. When you're kind to others but also firm in your boundaries, you demonstrate that your feelings and needs are just as important as theirs. This balance is the essence of Stoic relationships, connections built on mutual respect, honesty, and reciprocity. The next step is to start asserting yourself. This doesn't mean being aggressive or confrontational. It means calmly and confidently expressing your thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. For example, if a colleague asks you to take on extra work, instead of automatically agreeing, you might say, "I'd like to help, but my schedule is full right now. Let's find another solution." Or if a friend repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute, you could say, "I understand things come up, but it's important to me that we respect each other's time. Can we make sure this doesn't happen again?" These conversations can be uncomfortable, especially if you're used to avoiding conflict. But discomfort is a small price to pay for the respect you'll gain, not just from others, but from yourself. And here's the beauty of this shift. As you start to value yourself more, others will naturally follow suit. People are drawn to confidence and authenticity. When you show that you respect yourself, you set the tone for how others should treat you. It's also important to remember that not everyone will appreciate this change. Some people might push back when you start asserting yourself, especially if they've grown accustomed to your constant niceness. But their reactions are not your responsibility. What matters is that you're taking steps to live in alignment with your values and priorities. As Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, reminds us, seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves. Let's take a moment to reflect. What would your relationships look like if you stopped prioritizing niceness over respect? How much more fulfilling would they be if they were built on mutual understanding and equality, rather than one-sided accommodation? These are questions worth asking because they point to a deeper truth. Respect starts with you. When you respect yourself, you create a foundation for others to do the same. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and let us know by commenting number 1. Your experiences matter, and sharing them helps us all learn and grow together. And if you're finding value in this discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to explore about building stronger, healthier, and more respectful relationships. As we wrap up this point, let's remember that respect isn't something you demand, it's something you cultivate. It starts with small, intentional actions. Setting boundaries, speaking your truth, and treating yourself with the dignity you deserve. These actions may feel uncomfortable at first, but they're the key to creating a life where you're not just liked, but truly respected. And that's a life worth striving for. Reason 7. It's not true kindness. When we talk about kindness, we often imagine selflessness, generosity, and the ability to put others first. But what happens when our version of kindness is rooted not in genuine care, but in fear, obligation, or a desire for approval? This is where the line between kindness and being overly nice becomes blurred. And the truth is, being excessively nice isn't true kindness, it's something else entirely, and it can do more harm than good. True kindness stems from a place of strength and authenticity. It's the act of giving because you genuinely want to, not because you feel you have to. It's saying yes when you mean it and no when you don't, without guilt or resentment. But when you're overly nice, your actions are often driven by an underlying need to avoid conflict, gain acceptance, or prove your worth. This isn't kindness, it's self-sacrifice disguised as virtue. Why does this distinction matter? Because when you're not being truly kind, both you and the people around you suffer. You might think you're making others happy by being overly accommodating, but in reality, you're depriving them of the opportunity to experience genuine connection. Relationships built on excessive niceness lack depth because they're not based on honesty or authenticity. Instead, they're built on a version of you that isn't real. Let's break this down further. Imagine a friend asks for a favor that you don't have the time or energy to fulfill. If you're overly nice, you might say yes out of guilt, even though it stretches you thin. On the surface, it seems like you're being kind, but underneath there's tension. You feel overwhelmed and unappreciated, and your friend remains unaware of your true feelings. Over time, these dynamics erode trust and respect. Your friend might continue asking for favors, not out of malice, but because they believe you're always willing to help. Meanwhile, your resentment grows and the relationship becomes strained. Now consider an alternative scenario. Your friend asks for a favor and you respond with honesty. I'd love to help, but I'm really stretched thin right now. Maybe next time. This response is kind because it's truthful. It respects both your boundaries and your friend's ability to hear and understand them. It also lays the groundwork for a relationship built on mutual respect, rather than one-sided obligation. Stoicism teaches us that true kindness is an expression of virtue. It's rooted in wisdom, courage, and justice. When you're truly kind, your actions align with your values and you act with integrity. This means recognizing your own needs and limits while also considering the needs of others. It's not about being perfect or selfless at all costs. It's about striving for balance and fairness in your relationships. So why do so many of us default to being overly nice? Often it's because we confuse niceness with goodness. We think that by always saying yes or avoiding conflict, we're being virtuous. But goodness isn't about avoiding discomfort, it's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. And sometimes what's right is setting boundaries, speaking your truth, or saying no when it matters. Let's explore this idea further. Imagine you're in a romantic relationship where you consistently downplay your own needs to keep your partner happy. You agree to plans you don't enjoy, avoid voicing your concerns, and prioritize their preferences over your own. At first, this might seem like a loving gesture. But over time, this pattern creates an imbalance. Your partner never gets to see the real you, your likes, dislikes, and needs. Instead, they see a version of you that's always agreeable but not fully authentic. And without authenticity, true intimacy becomes impossible. Now ask yourself, is this really kindness, or is it fear of upsetting your partner? Is it love, or is it an attempt to avoid conflict? These are hard questions, but they're essential for understanding the difference between being nice and being kind. True kindness in a relationship means being honest about who you are and what you need. It means trusting your partner to handle that honesty, even if it's uncomfortable at times. The same principle applies to friendships, work relationships, and family dynamics. When you prioritize niceness over authenticity, you're not doing anyone a favor. You're depriving them of the opportunity to know the real you. And you're depriving yourself of the chance to form genuine connections. True kindness requires courage, the courage to be yourself, to set boundaries, and to act in ways that are fair and just. Stoicism reminds us that our actions should align with our values, not with the expectations or demands of others. This means rejecting the idea that you have to please everyone to be a good person. Instead, focus on being kind in a way that respects both yourself and those around you. This might mean having difficult conversations, disappointing others occasionally, or standing firm in your decisions. But in the long run, these actions create relationships that are stronger, deeper, and more fulfilling. Think about the people in your life who have had the greatest impact on you. Are they the ones who were always nice, never disagreed, and avoided conflict? Or are they the ones who were honest, compassionate, and unafraid to challenge you when it mattered? Chances are it's the latter. True kindness isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about fostering growth, understanding, and mutual respect. As we conclude this point, consider how your relationships might change if you embrace true kindness over excessive niceness. How much more authentic would your connections be if you stopped pretending to be okay with things that don't align with your values? And how much lighter would you feel if you stopped carrying the burden of other people's expectations? The journey toward true kindness isn't always easy, but it's worth it. It's a journey that requires self-awareness, courage, and a commitment to living authentically. But the reward is a life filled with relationships that uplift and inspire you, rather than ones that drain and frustrate you. That's the power of true kindness, and it's a gift worth sharing with yourself and with the people who matter most. We've taken a deep dive into 7 reasons why you should stop being nice to them. And if there's one truth to take away, it's this: kindness and niceness are not the same thing. Being overly nice, constantly sacrificing your own needs, avoiding conflict, and bending to the will of others may seem virtuous on the surface, but it often leads to resentment, imbalance, and a loss of respect in your relationships. True kindness, on the other hand, is rooted in authenticity, self-respect, and a clear understanding of your boundaries. By choosing to stop being overly nice, you're not abandoning kindness, you're elevating it. You're choosing to live in a way that's both compassionate and honest, where your actions are driven by genuine care rather than fear or obligation. This shift isn't just transformative for your relationships, it's liberating for you as well. It allows you to embrace who you truly are and to surround yourself with people who value you for exactly that. This journey isn't easy. It requires self-reflection, courage, and a willingness to let go of habits that no longer serve you. But the rewards are profound. When you prioritize your well-being and live authentically, you create space for deeper, more meaningful connections. You attract relationships built on mutual respect and understanding, the foundation of Stoic relationships, and you gain the inner peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. So where do you start? Begin by recognizing the moments when you're overly nice and asking yourself why. Reflect on whether your actions are driven by genuine kindness or by a need to avoid discomfort or gain approval. Then take small but powerful steps towards setting boundaries, expressing your true feelings, and prioritizing your needs. Remember, this isn't about being selfish, it's about finding balance. Imagine how your life could change if you embraced this mindset. Picture yourself surrounded by people who respect your boundaries, value your authenticity, and support your growth. Picture waking up each day feeling confident, empowered, and at peace with yourself. That's the life you're working toward, and it's worth every bit of effort. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope this video has given you valuable insights and the motivation to start prioritizing yourself in your relationships. If this message resonates with you, I encourage you to share your thoughts. What steps are you planning to take to stop being overly nice? What challenges have you faced in setting boundaries? Let's continue this conversation together. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content on building stronger, healthier relationships and living a life of authenticity and balance. Thank you for watching, and here's to your journey of growth and self-discovery. You've got this.